Why life feels hard when you live only from your sun sign. If life has felt hard for a long time, not in a dramatic way, but in a quiet, constant way, I want to start by telling you something important. You are not weak. You are not failing at life. And there is nothing fundamentally wrong with you. For many people, life doesn't feel painful because something is broken. It feels painful because something essential has never been understood. Most of us grow up learning how to function. We learn how to behave, how to adapt, how to meet expectations. We learn how to survive in the world. But very few of us are taught how to feel safe inside ourselves. And this is where astrology, when used properly, becomes something much deeper than personality descriptions or predictions. Astrology can explain why life feels heavy, even when you're doing everything right. When most people discover astrology, they're introduced to their sun sign first. This is who you are, they're told. This is your personality. This is your identity. So they begin to live from that place. They try to embody their sun sign. They try to become a better version of it. They try harder, push further, and hold themselves to that image. And for a while it works. They become functional. They become capable. They become productive, responsible, driven, or emotionally aware, depending on their sign. But underneath that functioning life, there is often a quiet question that never goes away. Why does this still feel so hard? This question doesn't usually come from people who aren't trying. It comes from people who are trying, people who are doing the work, people who are self-aware, people who are responsible, thoughtful, emotionally intelligent. And yet, no matter how much they improve, no matter how much they understand themselves on the surface, something still feels off. There is a sense of tension that never fully releases, a feeling of emotional exhaustion that doesn't match their circumstances, a background heaviness they can't explain. This is not a failure of effort. It is a misunderstanding of where effort should be placed. Your sun sign was never meant to carry your emotional life. The sun represents consciousness, identity, purpose. The part of you that knows how to show up in the world. It's the part of you that can try harder, that can improve, that can perform, achieve, and grow. But emotional safety does not live there. And when you try to solve emotional pain by becoming a better version of your sun sign, you unknowingly place pressure on the wrong part of yourself. You become very good at functioning, but very disconnected from resting. This is why so many people say things like, "I'm doing well, but I don't feel okay. I should be happy, but I'm not. I don't understand why I'm so tired all the time." These aren't signs of ingratitude. They're signs of misalignment. You are living from the part of yourself that knows how to do, but not from the part of yourself that knows how to feel safe. In this podcast, I want to offer a different way of understanding your life. Not as a problem to fix, not as a personality flaw, and not as something you need to overcome, but as a structure that can be seen clearly once you stop looking only at your sun sign and begin to understand what astrology is really showing you. Because the part of your chart that explains why life feels heavy is not the part you were told to focus on. And once you understand that, something very subtle but very powerful begins to change. In the next part, we'll talk about what happens when you try to live your entire life from your sun sign alone, why effort increases but relief doesn't, why achievement doesn't create peace, and why so many capable people feel emotionally exhausted. The living only from the sun sign. When you live only from your sun sign, life often looks fine from the outside. You're functioning. You're showing up. You're doing what needs to be done. But internally, something feels strained. That's because the sun sign is designed for expression and purpose, not for emotional safety. The sun answers the question, who am I becoming in the world? But it does not answer the question, where do I feel emotionally held? And when those two questions get confused, life begins to feel quietly exhausting. For people with strong fire signs, living from the sun often looks like constant motion. There's always something to do, something to chase, something to improve. Movement becomes a way to avoid stillness, because stillness feels uncomfortable, not because they're afraid of silence, but because silence brings them closer to emotions they don't know how to sit with. So they keep going. They keep acting. They keep pushing forward. From the outside, it looks like confidence or passion. From the inside, it often feels like restlessness. For people with strong earth signs, living from the sun often looks like responsibility. They take things seriously. They hold things together. They do what others rely on them to do. But rest feels undeserved. Ease feels irresponsible. Letting go feels unsafe. They carry weight because carrying weight has become their definition of worth. From the outside, they look stable. From the inside, they often feel burdened. For people with strong air signs, living from the sun often looks like understanding. They think things through. They analyze situations. They try to gain clarity, but understanding becomes a substitute for feeling. They know why something hurts, but they don't feel soothed by that knowledge. They explain themselves, justify themselves, rationalize themselves, yet the emotional discomfort remains. From the outside, they look insightful. From the inside, they often feel unsettled. For people with strong water signs, living from the sun often looks like emotional engagement. They feel deeply, they care deeply, they connect deeply, but boundaries blur. They absorb more than they can hold. They feel responsible for emotional climates around them. Feeling becomes overwhelming rather than nourishing. From the outside, they look compassionate. From the inside, they often feel flooded. In all of these cases, the problem is not the sun sign itself. The problem is asking the sun sign to do a job it was never meant to do. The sun can give direction. It can give meaning. It can give a sense of identity, but it cannot give emotional rest. This is why so many people experience a strange contradiction. They're doing better than before. They're more self-aware than before. They're more capable than before, and yet they feel more tired. This exhaustion isn't physical. It's emotional. It comes from trying to stabilize your inner world through the part of yourself that exists to interact with the outer one. When you live only from your sun sign, you become very good at functioning. But functioning is not the same as feeling safe. And safety is not something you can earn by being better, stronger, or more evolved. Safety comes from understanding which part of you has been living without it. In the next part, we'll talk about the moon sign and why it represents not your emotional talent, but your emotional deficiency, the place you didn't learn how to feel secure, the place that reacts before you can think, and the place that quietly shapes why life feels harder than it should. Moon sign emotional deficiency. To understand why life feels heavy in a way that effort never seems to fix, we need to talk about the moon sign, not in the way astrology usually talks about it. The moon sign is often described as your emotions or how you feel inside, but that explanation is too shallow to explain suffering. The moon sign is not your emotional strength. It's not what you're naturally good at feeling. The moon sign represents the place where emotional safety was never fully learned. This is a difficult idea for many people to accept because we're used to thinking of astrology placements as talents or traits, but the moon works differently. It reflects early emotional conditioning, the kind of care you received, the kind of reassurance that was available to you, the kind of emotional environment you had to adapt to, or more precisely, the kind you didn't have. Your moon sign shows the emotional need that didn't get consistently met, not because your caregivers failed, but because they were human, limited, and shaped by their own emotional patterns. So instead of learning how to feel safe there, you learned how to survive without it. And that survival strategy followed you into adulthood. This is why the moon sign feels confusing. You don't instinctively know what to do with it. You either avoid it or cling to it. You feel exposed there, reactive there, overwhelmed or numb there. And often you judge yourself harshly for it. You tell yourself you're too sensitive, or too detached, or too needy, or too cold. But what you're actually experiencing is not a personality flaw. It's a missing emotional language. Here's the part most people never hear. You don't consciously choose how your moon reacts. The moon lives in the body, not the mind. It reacts before thought, before logic, before explanation. That's why emotional reactions often surprise you. You can understand yourself intellectually and still feel completely hijacked emotionally. Because understanding lives in the sun and Mercury, safety lives in the moon. When the moon sign is misunderstood, people try to fix it. They try to become more emotionally capable, more independent, less reactive, less needy. But the moon doesn't respond to discipline. It responds to recognition. Most people attempt to solve moon problems by using their sun sign. They become more productive, more accomplished, more self-controlled, more self-aware. But the moon doesn't experience achievement as safety. So no matter how well life is going, the emotional discomfort remains. This is the quiet tragedy of living only from the sun sign. You succeed, but you don't settle. This is why two people with the same sun sign can experience life so differently. One feels relatively grounded, the other feels constantly unsettled. The difference is not strength or weakness. It's whether the moon sign has been recognized as a place of deficiency, not expectation. When you finally understand your moon sign in this way, something important shifts. You stop demanding emotional competence from yourself. In a place where competence was never taught, you stop asking, why can't I handle this better? And you start asking, what does safety look like for me here? That question alone begins to soften life. The moon sign is not asking to be mastered. It's asking to be acknowledged. It's the part of you that learned to live without a reliable sense of emotional grounding. And it has been working quietly in the background your entire life. In the next part, we'll talk about why ignoring the moon sign doesn't make it weaker, it makes it louder. How emotional exhaustion, relationship patterns, and unexplained anxiety all trace back to this unrecognized deficiency, and how simply seeing the pattern can begin to release it. Why ignoring the moon sign makes life harder. When the moon sign is ignored, it doesn't become quieter, it becomes louder. But not in a way that's easy to identify. It doesn't announce itself clearly. It doesn't say, this is your moon sign acting up. Instead, it shows up indirectly, through exhaustion, through anxiety, through repeating patterns you don't understand. And this is why so many people feel confused by their own pain. They look at their life and think, nothing is actually wrong. So why do I feel like this? When the moon sign is unrecognized, emotional needs don't disappear, they go underground. And unmet emotional needs, when pushed into the unconscious, don't resolve themselves. They express themselves as symptoms. One of the most common symptoms is chronic emotional fatigue. This is the kind of tiredness that doesn't go away with rest. You can sleep, you can take breaks, you can even take time off. But the heaviness returns, because what's exhausted isn't your body. It's the part of you that has been trying to regulate emotions without knowing how. The moon has been working overtime without the tools it needed in the first place. Another way ignored moon signs show up is through anxiety that doesn't have a clear cause. This anxiety often feels vague. Background noise, a constant sense of unease. It's not tied to a specific event. It's tied to emotional unsafety. The body is reacting to something the mind can't explain. And because the mind can't find a reason, it often turns inward. What's wrong with me? Why can't I relax? Why am I like this? But the problem isn't you. The problem is that the moon sign has never been given language or permission. Perhaps the most painful way the ignored moon sign manifests is through relationships. Because we don't just feel our moon sign internally, we seek it externally. We are drawn to people who activate the emotional territory. We don't know how to hold ourselves. We mistake activation for connection, intensity for intimacy, familiar discomfort for love. This is not random. It's the moon looking for completion. When the moon is ignored, relationships often feel draining or destabilizing. You may feel overly dependent on reassurance, or completely shut down emotionally. You may swing between closeness and distance without understanding why, and often you blame yourself for being too much or not enough. But what's actually happening is that your moon sign is being asked to feel safe through another person, something it was never taught to do internally. Ignoring the moon sign also creates a deep sense of self-blame, because when emotional needs aren't recognized as needs, they're labeled as weaknesses. You tell yourself you should be over this by now. You should be stronger. You should be more independent. But needs don't disappear because they're inconvenient. They persist. And the more they're dismissed, the more intense they become. This is why people often say, I've worked on myself so much, but I still feel the same. Self-improvement doesn't touch the moon. Unless it includes self-recognition, you cannot discipline yourself into emotional safety. You cannot think your way out of a place that never felt safe to begin with. The moon sign doesn't want to be fixed. It wants to be seen. And when it isn't, it expresses itself the only way it can, through discomfort. Not to punish you, but to get your attention. In the next part, we'll step back and look at the entire birth chart. How the ascendant, descendant, Mercury and Venus are all shaped around protecting, compensating for, or responding to the moon sign deficiency. Because once you see the full structure, your life stops feeling random. It starts making sense. The role of the whole chart. Once you understand the moon sign as an emotional deficiency, the rest of the birth chart begins to make sense in a completely new way. The chart is no longer a collection of personality traits. It becomes a survival system. Every major placement exists in some way to manage, protect, compensate for, or respond to the moon sign. And this is why the same moon sign can feel so different from one person to another, because it's never working alone. Let's start with the ascendant. The ascendant is not how you look or how others see you. The ascendant is how you learn to survive. It's the strategy you developed to move through the world without exposing your emotional deficiency. If the moon represents where you don't feel safe, the ascendant represents how you learned to avoid being hurt there. Some people survive by appearing strong, some by appearing calm, some by appearing intelligent, some by appearing emotionally distant. These are not choices. They're adaptations. You didn't choose your ascendant. You grew into it. This is why people often say, I don't feel like my ascendant, but I act like it automatically. Exactly. The ascendant is reflex, not identity. It activates when the moon feels threatened. Now let's talk about the descendant. The descendant represents the kind of people who walk straight into your moon sign deficiency. These are the people who feel familiar, magnetic, and often destabilizing. They don't just attract you, they activate you. You may feel deeply seen by them and deeply unsettled at the same time. That's because the descendant doesn't represent compatibility. It represents exposure. These relationships feel important because they touch the part of you that has never felt emotionally secure. This is why relationship pain is often so intense. It's not about the other person alone. It's about what they awaken in your moon. Next is Mercury. Mercury shows how you think, but more importantly, how you think when your moon is uncomfortable. Mercury is where you over-explain, where you analyze, where you replay conversations in your head. For many people, Mercury becomes the place they try to solve emotional pain logically. They think if they understand it enough, it will stop hurting. But emotional safety doesn't come from explanation, so Mercury often becomes overworked. This is why anxiety often lives in the mind, even though its root is emotional. Then there is Venus. Venus shows how you try to receive comfort, pleasure, and reassurance from others. It reveals how you attempt to compensate for your moon deficiency through love. This is where many people repeat painful patterns. They give too much. They attach too quickly. They avoid intimacy altogether, not because they don't want love, but because love has become a strategy for emotional survival. Venus isn't about romance alone. It's about how you try to feel okay. When you put all of this together, the chart becomes a map of adaptation. The moon shows what you lacked. The ascendant shows how you protected yourself. The descendant shows who triggers the wound. Mercury shows how you think about it. Venus shows how you try to soothe it. None of this is random, and none of it is a flaw. This is why people often feel a sense of relief. When they finally see their chart this way, their life stops feeling chaotic. Their reactions stop feeling shameful. Their patterns stop feeling like personal failures. They start to see structure, and structure creates compassion. In the next and final part of this episode, we'll talk about what actually changes when you stop trying to fix yourself and start understanding yourself instead. Why understanding doesn't magically solve life, but quietly makes it easier to live. And why that ease is often the beginning of real healing. Understanding instead of fixing. There is a quiet belief that many of us carry without realizing it. That if life feels hard, we must be doing something wrong. That if we just understand ourselves better, heal more, grow more, become more evolved, then one day life will finally stop feeling heavy. But this belief itself is often what keeps us tired, because it turns self-understanding into another form of self-improvement. Another place to perform, another place to succeed, another place to fail. When you see your chart through the lens of deficiency, something subtle but important shifts. You stop asking, how do I fix this part of myself? And you start asking, why did this part of me have to learn how to survive like this? That question changes the tone of your inner world. It replaces judgment with context, pressure with understanding, blame with curiosity. The moon sign, when seen as a deficiency, is not a problem to solve. It is a history to acknowledge. It tells a story about how your nervous system learned to cope, how your emotions learned to stay quiet, or loud, or guarded, or invisible. It explains why certain things feel harder for you than they seem to feel for others. And once you understand that, you stop comparing your inner experience to someone else's outer life. Understanding does not erase pain. You will still feel emotions. You will still have reactions. You will still have moments where life feels too much. But understanding changes how you relate to those moments. Instead of turning against yourself, you stay with yourself. Instead of forcing yourself to move on, you allow yourself to pause. Instead of asking, what's wrong with me? You ask, what is this part of me asking for? This is why astrology, when used this way, is not about prediction. It's about permission. Permission to stop fighting your own design. Permission to stop proving your worth through endurance. Permission to stop fixing what was never broken. Your chart does not show you how to become someone else. It shows you how you became who you are. When you understand your moon sign as a place of deficiency, you stop demanding emotional fluency from a place that never had emotional safety. You stop trying to be calm there, or confident there, or independent there. You simply allow it to be what it is. And strangely enough, that allowance is often what brings relief. Life doesn't become easy overnight, but it becomes softer. Moments that once triggered shame begin to trigger recognition. Patterns that once felt like failures begin to feel like adaptations. And slowly, quietly, you begin to live with yourself instead of against yourself. If there's one thing I hope you take from this episode, it's this. Your life hasn't been hard because you didn't try hard enough. It's been hard because you were trying to live without understanding your emotional center. And once you understand it, you don't need to fix your life. You just need to stop fighting yourself. In the next episode, we'll explore how each zodiac sign experiences living is hard in a completely different way, and how the moon sign shapes that experience beneath the surface. Until then, be gentle with the part of you that learned how to survive without feeling safe. Understanding yourself doesn't fix your life. It makes it easier to live